Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Friday, January 31st. Joining us now, Congressman Hank Johnson, representing the 4th District in Georgia, serves on the Judiciary Committee and Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Representative Johnson, nice to see you, my friend. How have you been?
Well, I'm weathering this shitstorm, I'll call it. It is coming fast and furious. All of these executive orders being issued and just trying to keep up with what is going on. That is my job as an elected official, and particularly as a Democrat, and to try to keep my people informed as far as what's happening, because so many folks are just tuned out. It's too tiring. I mean, it causes your brain to want to retire or go to bed. And so, but this is the wrong time to not be aware of what's going on.
Well, we found that people have begun to check back in, those who had checked out. And I think Donald Trump has served that purpose. Now, the longest 2 weeks of my life that he's been in office. And before we talk about policy, let's talk about yesterday. First of all, we had a horrific accident. I know you're on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And then Donald Trump reads from a statement for a few minutes, but then the real Trump showed up. And the real Trump was there blaming Black people, brown people, and women. And that's what DEI is about, in his view, for the plane crash. I've never heard an American president, and then Obama, Biden, and Buttigieg as well. I never heard an American president, just the bodies are not even out of the water, and blaming people and feeding some of his base some racist red meat at the same time.
Yeah, it was disgusting. I was in my car on the way to an appointment, listening to the press conference, and the first part, his initial remarks were, in keeping with the solemnity of the moment. I mean, it was a solemn. This was a solemn time yesterday morning, where the nation was dealing with shock and grief at what had happened, and sorrow for the victims and their families. And it was a time for us to kind of be united in our shock and grief about this accident that occurred. And Trump, to his credit, started down that line, but then he made a quick reverse into negative territory and started casting blame, and to blame diversity and equity and inclusion for the plane crash, and then to single out the helicopter pilot and the people working in air traffic control in the tower, just casting blame when, we don't know what probable cause led to this collision. We don't know what the contributing factors were, but I can tell you it wasn't diversity, equity, and inclusion that caused this collision. That's never been the cause of an aircraft collision, and never will be the cause of an aircraft collision. There might be some kind of human or mechanical or systemic issue in terms of what caused it, but certainly not diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so it was just another tirade in his ongoing campaign to make America white again, take us back into Jim Crow. That's what he wants to do. All of this is connected with these executive orders that cut diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also that cut the federal workforce. There's 2 million people received this email. I forget the name of it, but it's modeled after Elon Musk and what he sent to his employees at Twitter when he took over. Just mass layoffs is what he wants to do. So Trump wants to do a mass resignation, promising to pay people, and you're not going to pay people. And people can't rely on your promise to pay them, because you've got a history of non-payment of people who work for you and do work for you, contractors and small business people like that, that you just stiff And so, so it's all a part of a systemic and systematic destruction of democracy and our government as we know it, so that he can then install uh, a, dicta- a dictator form of government. And that's what we're facing now.
I could not agree with you more. And, Donald Trump bragged that, oh, he signed an executive order last week ending diversity in the federal government. Well, guess what? When we had diversity in the 4 years of Biden, we had not one plane crash. The minute you get rid of diversity, we have an accident. So, I mean, if diversity is bad, well, diversity was working before. And obviously his impact executive order was not felt yet. Um, he's really I'm from New Jersey, and I have to say, we would say in Jersey, this guy's a scumbag. He's really a piece of garbage, he's not even a president to me. It's even unlike the first time. This is just a bad human being who's in the White House right now, who, by all things being equal, should be in a prison cell. The guy attempted a coup. He incited a terrorist attack on our capital, but he's out and he's president, and we have to deal with this. And that brings us to him pardoning the January 6 attackers, some who brutally beat up police officers. Police officers I spoke to on my show, Harry Dunn, Michael Fanone, Sergeant Goodell, and others, and people convicted of seditious conspiracy, as you know, is one step below treason. And he let them out, and they're free. And some of them are committing more crimes already. So what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, one of the people who was pardoned was shot and killed last weekend
Mm-hmm.
by Indiana police, who he uh, apparently had some kind of altercation with. So these are dangerous, violent people that Trump released back onto our streets. And one of the things that he promised to do to get it, when he promised to voters falsely, was that he was going to make our communities safer, even though crime had been falling,
Mm-hmm.
crime rates had been falling. He pushed the falsehood that I'm going to make things safer. And then what does he do when he gets in? He undermines that principle by releasing a horde of violent right-wing radical felons back onto our streets to start rebuilding the militia movement, the private army movement that Trump told to stand by and stand back and stand by, which they came to Washington at his urging. They participated in the insurrection. They violently assaulted 140 police officers. They paid the price being prosecuted. He pardoned them, thus sending them the message that when you take political action on my behalf, I'll pardon you. So, I may need you again, by the way, so stand by. And we're in dangerous times, Dean.
I agree. And NPR did some great reporting yesterday going through who they could identify of the people he released. Some had no priors, but many had a lot of priors, including rape, child pornography, domestic violence, drug dealing. Some of them are really hardened criminals, and they were in prison. Now he let them back out. And there's going to be a Trump crime spike, I think. And we should call it a Trump crime spike, or however we want to dub it. We need a good expression. But there's another spike coming, and that's probably going to be in prices of goods. Donald Trump told us he was going to reduce the price of eggs and grocery. Instead, unless something changes, he's going to impose a 25% tariff on all imports from Mexico and Canada effective tomorrow, February 1st, which includes lots of vegetables, medicine, pharmaceuticals, minerals, could be gas, oil, car parts, and the list goes on. These are two of our biggest trading partners right now. From this point of view, or do you expect to see, from your point of view, do you expect to see a spike in prices and even seeing some inflation in our country because of Trump's tax on goods coming in?
Yeah, I look for recession to set in very soon. That means 2 quarters of negative growth in the GDP. So when you start imposing tariffs, then you increase the cost of goods, and you create pain for Americans and their families. These are the people who voted for you. Again, you promised them, in addition to making your community safer, I'm going to lower the price of eggs. Instead, the price of eggs has gone up since he got sworn in. And with these tariffs that he threatens to impose that apparently now are imminent,
Hmm.
it's going to further increase prices. And that's going to hurt people. That's going to hurt our economy. And so when you also consider um, that he is, in this mass deportation mode, that's going to have an impact on food prices and a lot of other prices as well, because you are deporting a an important component of the workforce that gets those crops out of the ground, uh, works in those meat packing plants, chicken processing plants, and whatnot. You're, you're deporting those people. So, you are really hurting our economy. Is what Trump is doing. And so I forecast. I'm not an economist, but I'm forecasting tough times for the American economy, and I think we'll probably go into a recession with unemployment and inflation going up.
And the economists are backing up what you're saying, Congressman Hank Johnson. So various articles that this kind of tariff, it's so burdensome, will cause a contraction on our gross domestic product, our GDP. People are going to have less buying power if things go up 25%, and it's going to be passed on to us. I mean, that's how it goes. And you don't need a PhD in economics to understand if you raise prices and you also reduce the potential workforce, they're inherently inflationary actions, both of them. And things are more and more expensive in a time when things were expensive already. And it continues. You mentioned immigration and Trump's mass deportations, in which Tom Homan, the border czar, brought Dr. Phil on a raid in Chicago, which is just a laughable spectacle. Like these are people's lives, and to them it's a joke. But in Georgia, is there a concern when you talk to people in your community, people maybe mixed status, families, and immigrants, even who are here legally, worried they're going to get swept up in these mass raids?
Yeah, people are terrorized and they are afraid, and they're making contingency plans, talking to their children, making sure that the children uh, know what to do in case they come home and the parents are not there. Now, while this reign of terror is taking place among the population of immigrants in my district and throughout the country, uh, you've got, gosh, the guy is freezing monies, grants, and loans that come from the federal government. Um, I mean, so these same people, many of whom are refugees
Yeah.
and making adjustments to American society, they're dealing with the knowledge of being swept up because, after all, these people like Tom Howman and Dr. Phil, agents in the field who are carrying out this policy with vigor and delight. They don't care whether or not you are a refugee or whether or not you're undocumented or whether or not you are an American citizen. Racial profiling is taking place. And if you look like a Latino, or if you look like a Chinese immigrant, or if you look like a person of color who may not be from this country, uh, we're going to sweep you up. And it's up to you if you don't have your wallet with you on that particular day and the officer decides not to believe you, because after all, they are operating under a quota system.
Hmm.
Got to lock up, got to detain so many people per day. And if you don't, then your job is on the line. So you got reckless, lawless behavior taking place out there. Um, all kinds of people getting swept up. So the immigrant community at large is alarmed, frightened, and terrorized. Their children are as well, and it's a bad situation in this country that we're dealing with at this time.
Yeah, and to your very point, in New Jersey, they were raised, the state I'm from, even though I live in New York City now, and they swept up a person who was a citizen, or at least here legally, who served in our military, was a veteran. And the person said, "I'm here legally, I'm a veteran," and they mocked him and called him a liar. Your colleague Bonnie Watson Coleman, who's on my show often, put out a statement slamming it. The mayor of Newark put out a statement slamming it. But my father passed away decades ago, but he had an accent from the Middle East. If he was still working in the kitchen, he was a cook. I could see them rating that, and if he didn't have the proper documents, they would just take him and sweep him up because he has an accent and he's brown. He's browner than me because I'm half Italian, so kind of I'm a little lighter skinned. But they would have swept him up. It would have been my family, and they don't care. Cruelty is the desire, and now they're going to build a concentration camp in Guantanamo Bay, according to Donald Trump, to hold 30,000 people. If you've got the people, why not just deport them back to their country? Why do you have to make a show and put a camp in Guantanamo? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, what's going to happen is that there will be a private for profit
Mhm.
entity put in charge of managing the facility down there, and they will bring in 30,000 people, detainees,
Mhm.
with the federal government paying, $70, $80 a night per bed, and with a scarcity in immigration court judges. So you got a backlog in cases that have to go through that process. All of these 30,000 folks will have to go through that process. And so what you're doing is just it's a relief act for the private for-profit prison industrial complex billionaires, many of whom attended the inauguration because they see Trump's inauguration as a massive payday for themselves. So they're going to make a lot of money. Taxpayers will be on the hook for paying the bill. And at the same time, Trump is going to engineer Trump and his compatriots in the House and Senate, his Republican Trump majority. They're going to usher in a tax cut for these same billionaires and then make the citizens pay for it by cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, anything else that helps people. And it's really a vicious cycle and circle that we see forming and moving. It's we have some tough days ahead of us, Dean.
I, that is the theme of our conversation. And I agree with you. I'm chatting with Congressman Hank Johnson. Look, people with money, wealthy people, have always had impact on politics. We understand that. This time, though, this election seemed different. It really, and I think Elon Musk, in a way, did it, but just the numbers after the election. I just said on the head of End Citizens United yesterday on my show, and we talked about the obscene amount of money involved here. And it really seems like, as President Biden said, we're heading toward an oligarchy, even really a plutocracy, to be honest, where it's the wealthy sitting around making policy. And is it different? I mean, is it more in our face now? The big donations to his inauguration committee, Donald Trump, and to super PACs before that. And we're going to see policy dictated by the wealthy for the wealthy. It's no longer by the people for the people, but by the wealthy for the people, for the wealthy. And that's what I see we're heading towards completely now.
Well, it's no doubt about it. When you just look at the lineup on the front row at the inauguration, it tells you that we have hit a new, we're shifting to a different direction now because the oligarchs were front and center. The world's three richest individuals were one, two, three, uh, right, and their lovely companions right next to, right there on the front row. And the biggest one of all, Elon Musk, whose net worth, by the way, increased from roughly around 240 billion on November the 5th up to about 465 billion, you know, at on inauguration day, and who spent, they say, at least $225 million to get Trump elected but that's just a drop in the bucket. 250 million versus 465, 470 billion, just a drop in the bucket. But this guy throwing up the Heil Hitler salute 3 times during the inauguration. So that tells you where we're heading it in this country, towards the oligarchs, away from equal rights for people of color, women, uh, just yeah, and a dictatorship and a plutocracy, as you say, because these guys are sitting around. Elon Musk has a office in the White House or in the White House Executive Office building, and a so-called agency that he commands that is supposed to be cutting $2 trillion in federal spending. And so this guy's making decisions, and he's from South Africa, not even born in his country. Uh, I assume he's a citizen here, but he
Something
was
like that.
born and raised in South Africa, home of apartheid, and apparently he wants to bring some of that back here as he reigns supreme from the White House. It's just a terrible situation that we're facing.
Yeah, there was a really good article in the New York Times. I don't know, from a year or two ago. I found it recently, and it was a deep dive into Elon Musk and his growing up. But he was raised during apartheid in an exclusive white segregated community of there. His family had a lot of money, and they said he was inundated with a lot of anti-black propaganda from the white supremacist government there. And that's part of who he is. There's nothing to escape. Then he moved to Canada for a little while, then came to America here. And to me, and I don't say this lightly, I don't think he's an American. He's a U.S. citizen. He's not American. He isn't bought into this. He's trying to interfere in the elections in Germany, in France. He's trying to get right-wing white nationalists. Getting back to a thing at the top here in the last few minutes, talking about Donald Trump and DEI, it really seems like he's trying to create a climate where if you're not a white Christian straight man, that if anyone who has a job anywhere, including me on my radio show, or women, people of color, that somehow we only got it because of a quota. Like, we're quota hires. We've not earned anything. And their goal, and I wonder if that's going to have an impact on hiring in companies, or people are going to be like, oh, if I, they're going to accuse me of DEI if I hire someone who's not a white man. And if it leads to more discrimination in the workplace, and also demonization in the workplace, where people openly say things like, you're a DEI hire, right to their face, because the president of the United States is saying that, and his allies, his minions, are saying this.
Yeah, well, you know, racism still exists in America.
Yeah.
There are still some white people who feel that Black folks and people who are of dark skin are inferior, that the white race is superior. That's the kind of movement that Elon Musk is supporting over in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Anti-Semitic, uh, that kind of fervor that he demonstrates is still alive in a world, alive and well in America, in the hearts and minds of some people, many people in high places. Number one, Donald Trump. But throughout the world of business, you will find folks, and they will discriminate. They will discriminate based on race. That's why we have laws that ban discrimination. And, they are being given a signal, Dean, that you can go back to discrimination now based on race, based on sex, based on national origin, based on disability. You can go to that, and you can create a society in the image that you think it should be, which is white, male, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. Um, you have the go ahead to do that. And many people in business will do it, not everyone.
Right.
So, I think as far as the businesses that will come out and publicly announce that we're doing away with our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, the public should take notice, and they should use their spending power accordingly. such as switching from Walmart to Costco,
Hmm.
um, not going to Target, but finding someplace else to purchase your goods from. So we've got to start really taking action to send a message to these companies that which is something you should already know as business people, that the more people you have at your table making decisions, the more outreach your products will have, the more attractive they will be to a growingly diverse society here in America. That's not going to change.
Very true. America is increasingly diverse by the day. And so this kind of whites only strategy, it could have worked during segregation, but doesn't work today because America's changed. Very last thing, the last minute, Congressman Hank Johnson. A lot of Democrats on the base call in, and they're struggling to see what the Democrats in Congress have as a unified message. And you have some Democrats who are being really good fighters. Others saying we got to find common ground with Trump. I'm hoping those people who say common ground, I hope that's falling in the background now after what we just saw Trump this week. But is there a unified message, or let me just ask, is there one that we're just not seeing loudly, and that's what people are waiting for?
Well, right now, what Trump has been doing over the last 12 days is flooding the zone, their strategy is called, which
Right.
is just shock and and uh, cause people to be frightened, cause people to again go back to sleep, because after the election, Dean, people shut down, and
I know.
they have come back.
Yep.
As you pointed out earlier, they are starting to get re-engaged, but with this flood of executive orders on so many different issues that shock the conscience, it's threatening to put people back in that same mood of I don't want to know what's happening. And so, you know, the first thing that we need to do as Democrats is to let folks know that yeah, things are bad and you need to be paying attention to it. Don't get thrown off by everything that's coming at you. You got to take care of yourself. You've got to. I mean, if you need to shut off for a couple of hours, or to avoid watching a particular program on TV tonight, or if you need to turn off a podcast that you would normally listen to because you just can't stand it today, that's understandable. But don't stay out of the game tomorrow. Get back in, cut it back on for 15 minutes or so.
Right.
Uh, we got to stay alert and stay aware of what's happening. Otherwise, you're going to fall for the okie doke. Secondly, be prepared to take some action, such as switching to Costco, avoiding Target, avoiding McDonald's. Take some action, and that action, Dean, might include joining a demonstration that might be called at some point in
Right.
support of the rights of federal employees, or the rights of women, or whatever that cause might be. Be prepared to come out, take some positive action, get into some John Lewis good trouble,
Mm,
which is always non violent, peaceful protest activity, to send a message, because that kind of activity works. It worked to cause Trump to decide to send a message indicating that he was pausing the freeze that he put on, even though he's not pausing it. He just
right.
withdrew the memo. And if the judge who enjoined the application of the freeze allows the freeze to go forward, he's going to reimpose it. So don't get it twisted. Don't fall for the okie doke. So people need to be aware of what's happening. They need to be ready to take some action. And we here in Congress are going to work with our stakeholders on the streets, of our outside stakeholders, to file actions in court to challenge things that Trump is doing all of this illegal activity. And we don't control the floor of either the House or the
I
Senate. We
know.
don't have a majority, but we can look forward to 2026, and we can start preparing right now to elect Democrats to take over the House and Senate in 2026.
I agree. And people should check out, take time, but never check out from this show. That we need to stay listening to the Dean Obeidallah show. Congressman Hank Johnson, it's great chatting with my friend. Thanks for going a little long here. We covered a lot of topics. I look forward to chatting with you, and keep up the good fight and keep getting in good trouble.
Thanks, Dean. And I, again, want to amplify what you just said. We got to watch and listen to folks like Dean
Yeah.
Obeidallah and his show. Those, that's where we get the truth from. So don't get tired. Turn it down a little bit if you just can't listen, but keep it on because the ratings are so important.
That's
Uh,
very good. That's going to be a promo for the show. All right, Congressman.
yeah,
Thanks so much, my friend. Have a great
thank you.
night.